You're watching TelecomTV's exclusive video coverage of the Gen 15 industry event in Dallas. It's time now for our main agenda panel discussion, subject being the reality of SDN and NFV from labs to implementation. What are the lessons that we have learned? Joining me to discuss the topic today, I have, and on my far right, Matthias Hein, who is Director of Bandwidth and Ethernet Services at Colt Technologies.
Yes, thank you. Welcome.
Next to Matthias, in the middle, we have Leighton Palmer, who is SVP Sales and Strategic Partnerships with UbiQ.
Yeah,
thanks for joining us, Leighton.
Thanks.
And between Leighton and myself, we have Chris Purdy, who is CTO of CNEX. Nice to see you again, Chris.
Me too.
First of all, proofs of concepts. We need proofs of concepts, obviously, to prove the concepts that we are encouraging and promoting. Why do we need the diversity of them? Because we've got about, 14 or 15 or so here at Gen 15. It's a wide range. So what is the whole objective of the proof of concept? Chris?
So, there are a lot of concepts to prove here. We're talking about actually retooling the telecommunications network that take place from the lowest levels of the physical implementation through to the operational on-demand services. So when you think about the scope of 100 years of technology that's been built in that we're retooling right now, there really are a lot of different areas that need to be proven in order to actually make it work.
Leighton, an important part of the process, getting these proof of concepts done right at the beginning?
I agree. I think it's all about validated design. We're asking our customers to change their business processes and they change their way their technology processes are adopted, so they need to validate that, the right concepts to be able to accept that.
Matthias?
Yeah, it's really true that proof of concepts needs to confirm that the interoperability between the different systems are also working in a live environment of a carrier. Because looking into isolated systems, platforms and so alone would not reflect the reality of how a carrier is, let's say, evolving their systems and their tools to get to the third network evolution. So therefore proof of concept with many different vendors included and reflecting a kind of a very specific use cases makes very much sense, and that it can translate it into their own environment back again.
Do we have sufficient? Yeah, are we covering the full range, the full gamut that we need, or are we introducing them on more of a staggered basis?
Well, I don't think that they've necessarily all come together yet. I think we've proven a lot of the concepts, so it's certainly been proven that for many of the network functions, they can run in a virtual environment and perform adequately. That has been pretty well proven on commercial off-the-shelf hardware, proven in terms of it. Not necessarily every network function, but a lot of them can absolutely be virtualized. We've proven concepts that you can instantiate these and take these down. We've proven many different areas. But I think one of the biggest areas that I don't think is where it gets really hard is when you actually have to turn this into a full operationalized environment. And in that case, there's always a substantial amount of integration that takes place, especially given that there really are no predefined standards. So I think that the POCs they prove their component, and I think you kind of know roughly the industry now is starting to get to a pretty good sense of that kind of works, that works, this works, that works. I think the challenge now is how do we bring that all together into actual production services.
And who's driving the work on proof of concepts? Is it coming from the standards bodies? Is it coming from the vendors, the carriers?
Actually, I would say that the original idea is, of course, here from the, let's say, the vendors to prove the interoperability of them. But I think the most realistic use cases or proof of concepts are then coming when you deploy it in your live environment and you need to check back, okay, which systems, which vendors have already exchanged some of their, let's say, standards and way how they work together. And in Colt we have started quite early with engaging some specific vendors to check about this or some specific configuration sessions that they should reflect in their proof of concepts. And we're working here with Sienna and Sign quite a lot, especially on these MEF sessions. We had a lot of, let's say, examples given to them, what they should build, what they should check on a proof of concept basis, so that we can this feedback into our live environment and make another proof of concept in a more, let's say, complex, realistic environment. But you need to have a kind of upfront check to be done first.
So I also think it's partly driven by the business needs of the operators, where they need to be more agile in how they deliver service. And so that means that in addition to the technology validation, which you see in these proof of concept, you also need to be able to validate the business system interaction as well. So beyond the proofs, you need to then go further to be able to productionize the technology.
I'm seeing, because an iterative process, we do one proof of concept, we evaluate, we then say discard or adapt or redefine, so it's a constant process of narrowing it down a little bit as to what works?
Absolutely. I think that there's a lot of learning that has taken place, and like if I had to summarize the one key conclusion of the POCs and the conclusion of all the work going on to date is this is all feasible. It can happen. There can be tremendous value associated with it. The hardest part is how do we operationalize it, right? The hardest part is how do we we got this vision of customer self-serve portals. And people then talk about service provisioning, for example, and they think, well, I just need to take an order and then fulfill it. And they're thinking about one particular use case. The reality is your customer has to first take a portal and they need to log in. We have to have an inventory of the services, and you actually have to present that customer with their existing services, because more changes happen than new. So when you actually really get into the real world associated with this, you learn even more. And I think that there's increasingly, that's what's happening right now, is both not just against the new NFV world, but in some cases they're taking this technology and applying it across their legacy as well, in order to enable the transition to the new world. Because, for example, if you can't assure your services against a physical network today, or you can't provision your services in a dynamic way across physical, then when you add in the NFV component of those services, because the services will cross old and new, then you're not going to be very successful. So I think that's the evolution that's underway.
I mean, it's encouraging to hear what you say there about these proof of concepts have shown us that everything is possible. Yeah. I mean, are we finding this as well? That we're finding that yes, all our theory is it can actually come about.
Yeah, I think everything is possible, but the achievement of it is incremental. So what we're finding is that you have to then empower these customers with the tools to be able to look at specific services, specific processes, and then extend those with the right set of toolkits, right? Whether it's DevOps as an approach to be able to build it yourself. I started here, now I want to extend it to Service 1 to Service 2.
Matthias, as an operator on the panel there, you're working with a cross-section of different vendors and partners and developers. What's next for you? What's your thinking? How do you want to take things forward next?
I guess what really shows then if the assumptions and the concepts are working is when you deploy it in front of a customer. And we are currently just rolling out network services which are self-configured via a portal, and the customer has the direct access to the OSS platform. So every change they are doing, every configuration they are doing is immediately affecting the network. So this will be then the point of truth, basically, where then if the robustness of the self-service configurations are end-to-end fully implemented, so that when a customer makes changes here in the network, which immediately will be activated, that it doesn't corrupt anything somewhere else, or that the assumptions from a capacity management and from a, let's say, authorization management were all correct, and customers cannot do any harm to the network overall. So that's one of a proof case which cannot be really built in a lab environment. You need to have your live networks, you need to have your live customers, you need to feel how a customer actually then behaves, what they are going to do, and maybe switching something on and back and whatever. So that's our next step, and we will start doing this in just a small, let's say, environment from our network footprint, not deploying it across all the possible endpoints immediately, So this will be a staged approach rolling this out.
I think that's happening everywhere. Like, everyone's now starting to move from the POC stage to small-scale live deployments and they're learning a tremendous amount from those as part of it. I think there's kind of two key barriers that still exist. For any one operator and any limited set of network services, it's quite feasible to go off and take an LSO, lifecycle service orchestrator, that's helping integrate it into the appropriate systems and make it work. I think one of the big challenges that everybody wants to do this in a way that A, you prevent vendor lock-in, and B, you're building it in such a way that as you create new services and change those services, that you can create new service types, not service instances now, new service types, and evolve much more than what happened in the old world of OSS, right? And I think one of the big barriers is if you want to achieve that, that's very hard because it requires a certain amount of industry standard interfaces so you don't get these locked in. A lot of those standards don't exist yet. And so what ends up happening is you end up with a custom implementation in each of the different service providers, which is a problem for the providers because they've got to re-implement the same stuff over and over and over again. And it's a problem for the vendors because they have a product component that doesn't quite fit, in each of the existing environments. And so, I think that is the harder problem to solve, is to allow this level of third network services to happen and make them so you can create new service types and do it without vendor lock-in. I think that's the hardest part.
I think everyone will agree on the vision that they want to achieve, ubiquitousness, right? Same certified interfaces across a set of network services. The problem is that, as I mentioned this morning, it's low margin and ubiquity. It's hard to differentiate, right? So that's why each customer want a specific set of features to differentiate them from the competitors. The same on the supply side. We all need to build commodity hardware, but then we need to differentiate so that we can create value. So part of the inertia I see is how do we create value while creating this ubiquitous solution set for the customers to take advantage of.
So we've deployed a lot of POCs, we've looked at POCs, we've learned the lessons, we're developing, we're taking this process forward, bringing it all together. Final question for the three of you then. What do we really need to do to take the work from where we are now to see that final goal there of getting commercial deployment of all this technology, all these ideas, all these models? What are the steps that the industry is taking to get to that end goal? Matthias, can I start with you?
Well, as I already mentioned, so we need to bring it out to the live environment and monitor and look back what let's say maybe habits and behaviors from customers are, which we haven't considered upfront. And there's just one very specific example when we first defined internally the network as a service requirements. And when we presented it to customers, we found information or requests back like, well, how can I make a two-stage authorization of a change which is put into the system? Okay, we haven't thought about that. So, because in some organizations, the IT management needs to have a kind of a permanent logging and also a permanent reconciliation, who does what in the network. So, and such things will evolve now into our setups, into the definitions, and we will need to play it back to vendors as well, saying, well, actually we need these and these type of functionality further in. And I guess this is the journey and the evolvement which will definitely come now after the initial deployments.
Yeah, I think it's stepwise, provider by provider, each one going through, and then we're going to evolve. There's no magic, set of plans from here to there. Just as Matthias was saying, we're constantly learning as we go. Nobody understands the requirements of this out of the box. It's when you actually do that first deployment that you learn more and then evolve. And so I actually, increasingly I'm seeing real world deployments underway where they really are virtualizing functions, where they're really putting in SDN controllers, where they're really putting in lifecycle service orchestrators and evolving this. But it's and it's just a circular journey to get there.
Leighton, final summary of what we need to do next?
Yeah, I agree with the summary that these guys have just said. One of the cases I see is that we have to clearly define the business plan. New services are great, but somebody made the point this morning, the end customer doesn't care whether it's running on the old physical infrastructure or the new virtual one. And so we have to do a better job of communicating the new value and benefit to that customer and attach a cost or a cost savings to that. And I think that will drive more implementation of these standards.
Great. Leighton, Chris, and Matthias, thank you all very much indeed. And a final reminder that you can watch all of our panel discussions and interviews from Gen 15 on our website, telecomtv.com. Thank you and goodbye.